After a couple years now of sparring a little bit with you over Dylan Raiola, news broke earlier today, Dan Rubenstein, that your alma mater, our Oregon Ducks, have secured the services of one Dylan Raiola. Raiola entered the transfer portal. It was clearly a very big news story in our little universe here. Dylan Raiola has been a name that we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
Raiola goes into the transfer portal, was relatively quiet, I would say, for the last couple weeks. Lo and behold, despite some earlier rumors that didn't seem as if they were going to click between Raiola and Oregon, he is ending up there at long last, sir.
Yeah.
I will not drone on any longer. I say the gods have smiled upon me, though, because I know that you're not always a huge fan of Dylan Raiola and what you've seen from him thus far in his 2-year stay with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So what say you now?
It'll be interesting to see how it works out. What's next? No.
I love it.
Okay.
I love that I get this. Thank you. Thank you, college football. I love that I get this.
So, no, I was not a huge fan of watching him at Nebraska, and it was I guess an impressive start on some level. Nebraska fans were very high on his potential this season. It quickly went not sideways. There were a lot that was going sideways about Nebraska this year, obviously. I think he broke his fibula. That was the injury he suffered against, I want to say, USC, sort of 2/3 of the way into the year. The calculus from Oregon's perspective, and as we're recording this, we don't know Dante Moore's intentions with regard to his NFL future, whether he's coming back or not. So the reported word is that Dante Moore's decision has little bearing on Dylan Raiola, in that if Dante Moore is gone, obviously Dylan Raiola would be in position to compete for the starting job at Oregon next year, which is a more stable offensive place than Nebraska, given offensive line roster, given receivers available to throw to, running game, offensive coaches, track record of developing quarterbacks in Eugene under this coach. So you understand it from his perspective, and from Oregon's perspective, certainly the raw talent, the arm ability, the physical ability is there, right? It's just a sort of potential play right now that they were able to be that program for wandering 5-star quarterbacks who couldn't fully figure it out at a place in which they had a lot of pressure. Right,
the
Dylan
island
Raiola,
of misfit 5-star toys.
Well, like the legacy guy, right? Bo Nix at Auburn, and the Raiola name at Nebraska, carries weight. And so Oregon is a stable place by and large compared to the rest of this sport. And they say, okay, we'll bring our stability. We'll bring, we'll have a great defense. We're returning all these players now on defense. Their whole defensive line is coming back. We'll see who else is back on both sides of the ball. That this is a place that we can maximize abilities. And so that's their thinking, and that he's willing to sit for a year in the way that Dante Moore sat for a year behind Dylan Gabriel after he transferred from UCLA, and sort of regroup, rehab, and, restart his career. He has a reputation of being somewhat difficult, fair or not. He was at a bunch of different high schools. He committed to, I think, both Ohio State and Georgia before committing to Nebraska ultimately. And so I suppose the optimist view of Dylan Raiola's time in college football so far, and as a big-time high school recruit, is that he was immature and finding his way and needed better guidance and leadership, and perhaps that guidance and leadership exists at Oregon. I think Dan Lanning is something like 48-8 in his time as a head coach in Eugene. And so it seems to be a more plug-and-play place for talent. I didn't love him in Nebraska. I don't love starting true freshmen. I love when guys at least get a year. Very few of these guys are ready to come in, especially given lofty expectations that generally true freshmen who are starting come with. There were throws he made that were incredible, but by and large, I thought he was slow processing. I thought he tried to will too many things to happen instead of letting the game come to him. And I didn't think he was of upper half of the Big Ten caliber at Nebraska when all was said and done, when you look at the totality of his time there. And so I'm hoping for the best for Oregon, first and foremost. If that happens to be with a successful Dylan Raiola, so be it. But I don't know. I guess part of this is also like Dylan Raiola looking at the market for like what is the most major place that I could come in and start immediately. And the market was like, well, we're not really sure. There was a lot of like Louisville conversations, which, that's a tick or two below where Oregon has been recently. And I think he's looking at this as his sort of last chance to shine on a major level and, rehabilitate his name and image and likeness for potential NFL consideration in a couple years. I don't know.
I mean, we're recording this on Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, we still don't know what Dante Moore is going to do. I think people out there have had a false assumption that, and I guess we'll find out for sure if it's false or not, but there's been this false assumption that because Raiola has committed now to Oregon, therefore it must mean Dante Moore is going pro. Mostly you, but between the two of us, I think we've heard a lot of the contrary.
Right.
That Dante might actually be inclined to stay. Now, we don't know that. This could age very poorly, but I just wanted to put that on record. If I'm an Oregon fan, I want Dante Moore to stay. I would much prefer Dante Moore be my starter next season with a talent that is on hand than bringing in a fresh Dylan Raiola, comes from a different place, who has some real questions about his game.
Right.
Dylan Raiola has been very accurate throwing short passes, but some of the longer balls, mechanics have broken down. As you mentioned, processing on some of those longer passes has not always been great.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of cleanup here that needs to go on if Raiola is to truly rehabilitate the image and get to anywhere close to that 5-star potential.
Yeah.
He's just not there yet. Now, I get it from the Oregon perspective. From the Oregon perspective, this is a gamble on potential, not so much on production. To that end, I guess kind of the opposite of what Cignetti is doing at Indiana, but nonetheless, it is not a bad place to be to have a very capable backup quarterback. There are many programs around college football that have an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not he's the backup or the starter, this is clearly a developmental play on the Oregon side and for sure on the Raiola side. I kind of don't get this on the Raiola end of things, though. If in fact this is a move that ends up being, you're going to wait your turn, you're going to learn behind Dante Moore.
Humbling yourself, yeah.
You're gonna learn this offense, and then you're gonna get the keys to it in 2027. I don't think I really understand that logic. I understand needing to get better. I understand clearly needing to do a little bit more to get to that 5-star potential and make yourself a future NFL prospect.
Right.
But my hunch is that there are plenty of places where Raiola could have gone and played right away, even if it wasn't quite at the level of Oregon. I don't think Louisville would have been a bad stop. There are plenty of other programs around college football that have a pretty good track record for developing talent. So I am very much mixed on this move from his perspective. On the Oregon side, it's like, it's just money.
Right.
And they have a luxury of having a lot of it. That's how they've been able to amass the talent that they've got.
I don't think they're paying a lot for him, by the way.
No?
Oh, no. I don't think they're paying a premium price for him. I think he looked at the market, looked at what his end goal was, which is getting drafted in the first round of the NFL draft.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's a realistic thing, but I'm saying that's likely his goal.
Sure.
Is getting drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, and that, Bo Nix is, I have no idea how good he is or not good, but I think he's a quarterback on a really good NFL team and got drafted.
They're the number one seed in the AFC.
Right. So even if he is a below average NFL quarterback, he got drafted in the first round and is the number one seed in the AFC playoffs. And Justin Herbert, take your pick. I think there were 4, 5, 6 Oregon quarterbacks who started a game this year in the NFL, and a couple of them were drafted in the first round, Mariota, obviously. So I'm a big believer in sometimes places are meaningful, that you thrive in certain places. Certain places have the stability to thrive, and through different coaches as well. And so from his perspective, I don't think he's making a ton of money. I think he's probably, taking less money to look at more upside long-term. And if it doesn't work out from Oregon's side, if he's starting next season, if Dante Moore goes pro, they're not paying him a ton. If he is a backup and shows in practice that he's not capable of being a top 3 Big Ten quarterback, top 5 Big Ten quarterback, they'll go in a different direction. I actually do think it's minimal risk on Oregon's part. And maybe Oregon fully whiffed on every quarterback they really, truly wanted in the portal, but somehow that does not strike me as the world we live in, given what Oregon's been able to do previously.
If they've been able to convince Raiola to come there, potentially as a backup.
Yeah.
And if he knows that going in.
Yep.
I tend to agree on the Oregon side. There's a lot of upside here, and there's not a lot of risk. You have a capable backup at worst if Dante stays.
Yep.
And if not, you still got a 2-year starter that's going to take over the reins at quarterback. So from that standpoint, I think it works. Dylan Raiola has fallen victim to the 5-star thing, to the label. And he has not yet lived up to that. If Oregon can help him get there, then that will be a huge win for both of the parties here. But I just, for as much as I think I watch Dylan Raiola's game and I can see the potential, I also am very mixed on this. Very mixed on this from his standpoint, because I just think he needs reps.
Sure.
I think he needs more reps. I think he needs more reps with a better supporting cast for sure. I mean, that's part of the calculation, sure, for going to Oregon. But if there's potential to have to sit and wait a year, I don't like that. If I'm him, I go somewhere I can play right away, maybe somebody with a better track record for developing quarterbacks in Nebraska, and let's just make a clean break and start over.
But by the way, speaking of clean break, he's coming off of a serious injury, and his market yesterday wasn't what it was when he was a high school senior, right? I don't think people were just like getting in line to throw $5 million at Dylan Raiola. I don't, he spent time in Arizona, and ASU was not making a run at him. There's a lot of big places that, have quarterback needs. LSU was not making a run at him. And so Ole Miss was not making a run at him, pending Trinidad Chambliss. And so Miami, his name came up with Miami just because they've been that team that has gone after high-level portal quarterbacks successfully.
And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
But it didn't seem like there was actual realistic smoke with Miami, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it just never came out. But that's telling to me, and we'll see.
We will see. What the thing that I do like for Raiola going to Oregon, though, is Oregon, I think over the last couple of years, though some of the coordinators have come in and kind of put their own little spin on the offense. The offense is kind of the offense. They have a pretty good identity for what they want to do. And so he is stepping into stability in terms of what they're trying to run on the offensive side of the ball. He didn't really have that at Nebraska. The other thing, and it goes without saying, going to go to a place like Oregon, but clearly a better supporting cast. It's going to be a better supporting cast. If nothing more, he'll have a better line than he had in his time at Nebraska. And all quarterbacks tend to benefit from that. So he's not going to a place where he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of dolts. Clearly, Oregon has assembled a ton of talent across the board. It's an embarrassment of riches, especially now if you have 2 quarterbacks in the room, 2 former 5-star quarterbacks in the room, if that ends up being the case. So Oregon's in a good spot. I tend to agree. Very low risk for them. It really is just money on some level, and you'll see if you can get the most out of Raiola. On the Raiola side, whether he's treating this Oregon situation as a year to sit and learn and prove himself, or if he's hoping to get the keys right away if Dante leaves, that remains to be seen at time of recording. But clearly one of those stories that we're going to need to pay attention to now as we go through spring ball, as we get closer to the NFL draft, as we get closer to the 26th season.
And we've seen it, by the way, to sort of, spread it a little bit wider. We've seen it in this sport where you look at a quarterback one place, and you're like, I think it's pretty good. And then goes to a place that is a more established, a better incubator of talent, surrounds a player with more talent and better coaching and, just more general comfort, which is, what every quarterback needs. Look at Michael Penix from Indiana to Washington. Look at Bo Nix, right? Look at Fernando Mendoza, right? He was a pretty good ACC quarterback. Cal had pretty good receivers, pretty good running backs. They had a good year with Jake Spavital a couple years ago. You couldn't look at Fernando Mendoza and say he wasn't good at Cal. You're like, he's a pretty good quarterback. Should have beaten Miami a couple years ago. Some weird calls at the end there. But then he goes to a place that is better for him, surrounds him with more, is a more stable place, can go in and feel more comfortable in an offense, and you thrive. And so we've seen it all around this sport. It doesn't always work out, but there are plenty of examples of a guy going to a place that is better suited to develop a quarterback, and it just works. And so there's that potential there. We'll see.